Hello all, this is Liji and today let us see functions in Python. Before going into detail on what is function and all, let us see two sets of code in Python. So here if you see this is a first set of code. So here you are assigning 0 to a variable balance. Then we are having an infinite while loop over here. We are printing few options to the user. Then we are getting the user choice over here. Then depending on the choice, if choice is 1, we are adding some deposit amount is being added to the balance. In choice 2, the withdrawal amount is subtracted from the balance. Then we are printing the balance, and then we are, if the option is 4, we are exiting from the loop or the program itself. This is the first set of code. Now consider this set of code. So here again we are having the balance 0. Then there is something print banking options, and that whatever is coming from that is assigned to choice, and depending on the choice we are depositing withdrawing, printing and exiting from the nodes. So now consider these two code, the first set of code, that is this one, and the second set of code, that is this one. Which is easier to understand, first or second? It is the second one, right? Because there here this here we have some meaningful names over here which tells us, okay, this must be what is happening over there, instead of going into details of what exactly is there in it. Here again, deposit, we easily can understand that if the choice is 1, we are making a deposit. If choice is 2, we are making a withdrawal. Here we are printing the banking option, so it is easily understandable, right, in the set 2. In set 1, here it is detailed code, so we'll have to go look into it much detail to understand what is going on. Now this is very small program which is spanning, which is having hardly 10 to 15 lines of code. But what about bigger programs and all? What will happen if we have to go into detail into each and every step to understand what exactly is happening? Then it becomes difficult, right? So in such cases functions come into handy for Python. So what are functions? A function is a named group of related statements that perform a specific task. So here what we have to notice here is it is a named group. It is a named group of related statements. So related statements are grouped together and it is put under a name, okay, and it performs a specific task. What does the function do? It makes the program modular and more readable. This is what we have seen on top, right? It made the function more modular. Okay, made the function, it made the program more modular and more readable. So compared to this first program, the second program was more readable, and it made it modular in the sense like it is dividing it into different modules, like this is one module, this is another module. So what exactly happening inside it, we'll have to go and see in detail, but at least on seeing the higher level name we'll understand, okay, this is what is happening. So what exactly happens when we are doing modular programming is the entire set of program, it is divided into different subsets, and these subsets will be having names and which will help us to understand the overall program. Okay, so in case of functions, this is how we can define a function in Python. So here we have def. Syntax is, we start the function definition starts with the keyword def followed by the function name and then followed by the parenthesis, opening and closing parenthesis. Then there is a colon, and what all statements that comes under the function is given in using an indentation. Okay, so statement 1, statement 2, so it is having an indentation over there. Okay, so that is how a function is created in Python. So def's keyword, then the function name, parenthesis, colon, and all the statements inside the function is given under using an indentation over here. It is same exactly as we create other block statements like if structure, for loop, while loop, etc. Here only it is all the entire statements that is coming under the block, it is intended to the right. Same way in case of function, the only difference is that we'll define it using the keyword def, then the function name, parenthesis, and then the colon. Okay, now consider. So we were seeing this example. print banking options. We were seeing this. We know that there is something happening over here. Print bank options. We exactly didn't know what exactly it is. Okay. So if we see over here, see, we have defined DEF using the keyword DEF. We have defined it. Then we gave the name print banking options, open parenthesis and close parenthesis followed by a colon over there. Okay. Then what is happening inside? We are printing the options that are there: deposit, withdraw, check balance, and exit. Okay. So this function is printing. Is having this these many options in it. These statements, these four statements will be printed when this function is called. So this is known as a function definition. Okay. So the print bank option, what exactly it happens, that is given in the function definitions, and in case of this thing, these are the thing that is happening. Okay. Now let me just try to execute this. Nothing happened. See, I'm executing it, nothing is happening. It is executing, but we are not able to see any output. Okay. That is because the statements inside a function will be executed only if it is called. Okay. Only when the function is called, then only the statements will be executed. That is why when I executed this set of statements, it didn't give us any output. Okay. And functions once defined can be reused any number of times. Okay, if you define it and keep a function, you give it a name, then it can be called any number of times. Okay, once it is defined. A function cannot be called before it is defined. Okay, a function has to be defined, then only it has to be called. Okay, before defining a function, if we are calling a function, it will throw an error. Okay, so if you see over here, here we have the function definition. Okay, it is defined. I am executing it, nothing happens. But when I execute this statement over here, when I execute this statement over here, see, it is printing deposit. So I just called the function. Okay, so here it is defined and here we are calling the function. Okay, when I called, all these four statements got executed and we got the output. The output is printed on the screen. Okay, so a function is having two parts. One is function definition and function call. A function definition is where we define how the function, what operation the function should do, or how the function works. That definition happens in the function definition part, but it will be executed only when we call the function. So we can define a function and keep it, and we can call it whenever we want it. But without defining a function, you should not be calling a function, otherwise it will throw an error. So if you see over here, I am calling the function. We have defined it only once, but I am calling it thrice over here. See, so it executed the function. Printed the four statements for three times. Okay, so the function is being called three times, which means that the control went here and it executed each of these statements. Okay, that's one by one. Okay, three times it happened. Okay, so we have and now I hope we are clear with what is a function. So a function is a named set of statement. It has a function definition and a function call. We can keep the function definition ready, but whenever we call the function, then only it will be executed. And function once defined can be called multiple times. Okay, and without defining, we cannot call a function. Now there are two types of function: user defined functions and building functions. Okay, user defined functions are the functions that are defined by the users. So you have already seen the user defined function over here. This is an user defined function. Here we have defined a function which will print the banking options available to us. Okay, similarly, ICICI Bank will be having some other banking options, SBI will be having some other banking option. So it is a user defined function. Okay, and here we are defining it as per our node use. It is not universal. Okay, so such functions are known as user defined functions. Then another function is building functions. Building functions are those functions which are included with Python core package. Okay, package or modules or libraries, like example print, input, and len. You have been using all these functions throughout, right? Print we have been using, input we have been using, len. So it is defined somewhere in the core Python package. Okay, it is already defined. It is already defined when we call a print. Okay, this has to be outputted on the screen. How it has to be outputted on the screen is everything is defined inside that function, and it is present in the core Python package. How it is doing it, we are not known to us, but we are using it using the function called print, and we are calling the print function n number of times in our one program itself. So we are using the existing function print um, in our Python programs. Similarly, input, len, if you remember, we are using it to find the length of items in a list, string, and everything, basically, right? So all those are built-in functions. And now, right now, what we saw, the print banking option, it's a user-defined function defined by us. Now, a function can have an input, process, and output. Process to we saw. In case of print, what is the process? Whatever input we are giving, it has to print it on the screen, right? Same in case of this print banking options. When we call the functions, it will print what are the options available for banking. It will be printed on screen. So every function will be having a process. In case of input, it will take the user input and give us the input. In case of length, it will find the length of the sequence, and so that is a process. So each function can have an input, and depending on the input, it will do the processing and it will give us an output. This input and output is optional. We'll see that in detail. So now coming to print. Okay, if you are just calling the function print, what happens? Nothing. Okay, we'll get a blank output. So we are not giving any input to print. When we call what it does, it just prints a blank line on the screen. Now suppose we are doing this print, enter a number. So what it prints the message. Whatever we are passing over here, it prints that on the screen. Okay, so this enter a number is the input to the function, and what it does, it prints that on screen. So this is input. Enter a number is the input to the function, and this is the process that is happening. And if by executing the process, it is printing it on screen. So this is an input. Similarly, in case of len, okay, so here this list 1 2 3 4, this is the input. This list 1 2 3 4 is the input to len function, and whatever we are getting here 4, that is the output of the function. So it is returning as 4. That is the output. That is the length of the list. So it is returning as 4. That is the output of the function. Now consider a user defined function def. We are defining a user defined function add, and we are what we are doing, printing 5 plus 3, 5 plus 6. Okay, so what will happen, we defined the function and I executed it, nothing happened. So I'm just calling the function. So once I call the function, it will print 11. That is 5 plus 6 is 11. Now, I can call the function any number of times. It will give 11, 11, 11. But it doesn't make sense, right? You are having a function. You can just add two numbers, hard-coded numbers, 5 plus 6. It doesn't make sense, right? You should be able to give some input to the function, and you should be able to get some output from the function, right? So that is how exactly the input works. So if you see over here, I have redefined the function. So def add, I'm giving two parameters over here, two input 1 and input 2. Then what I'm doing, I'm printing input 1 plus input 2. Now I have redefined the earlier add defined over here. Here we are hard coding the numbers. What is happening over here, it is taking two inputs. So this is how it takes the input. Okay, we are giving, it is just input 1 and input 2 are just two variable names. So we are giving two inputs separated by commas. Then we are printing the result. Okay, print input 1 plus input 2. Okay, so I execute it. Then I am calling the function with the parameters 5 comma 6. Okay, which means that, see, I get the output as 11. So what happens, input 1 will be having 5 and input 2 will be having 6. Okay, and here it will print input 1 plus input 2. So I am getting 11. I can give some other values over there. I am giving 7 8. Okay, passing to input 7 8, and I'm getting the output 15. So here we are customizing the function, okay, with the inputs that we want. Okay, so what will happen, this input, specifying the inputs, helps us in customizing the functions as per our needs. There is no limit on the number of inputs that we can give to a function. then input values are supplied while calling the function. When we are calling the functions, we are supplying the input values. Now, if you see over here, in case of this, these two, input 1 and input 2 over here, input 1 and input 2 over here, these are known as the parameters, function parameters. That is how the function takes the inputs. Okay. And while calling the function, whatever value we are passing, they are known as arguments. So these things, the verb that is coming in the definition of the function, they are known as the parameters. There will be the variables which will be holding the values that is passed during function call, and these values are known as arguments in case of a function. So if you see over here, a parameter is a variable defined by a function. An argument is a value passed to a method during the call. By default, arguments will be assigned to the parameters in the order they are supplied. So here what will happen, input 1 will be having 5 and input 2 will be having 6. It will be assigned in the order we are passing the values. Okay. Now let us see how we are getting the outputs from the function. Okay, we are calling over print over here. I am checking the type of print. It is none. So what happens in case of print? Print just displays everything on the screen. It is not giving us any output, anything in return to us. Okay, it will just return none. Okay, in case of input. Okay, so I am entering something and I'm entering something over here and the type is string. Okay. In case of input, we have seen whatever we enter, I am entering some numbers over here. Then the output will be always of type string. Okay. So the input is returning something and it is of type string. Okay. In case of alien, if you see, it is returning the length of the sequence. Okay. So obviously the type is int. In case of our add 3, 4. Okay, now what will be the output? What will be the type? It is printing 7, means it is adding 3 and 4. It is printing 7, but it is not returning anything. That's why it is saying none type. Okay, so if we assign, if you want to use the value that is returned, well, that is the sum of the output, sum of those two numbers in your code, we cannot use it because it will just output it using print, but it is not returning anything back. Okay, so when we assign it to x, okay, I'm assigning it to x over here, then I'm just printing x, nothing comes, means this 7 came from the print statement over there in the add function. Okay, but h, when I print h, nothing comes. I'm checking the type of h. Here it is coming as none type. Okay, so in case of a add function that we defined over here, see over here, it is just printing over, it is not returning anything back to the user. So we cannot use the output of such functions in our code. Okay, we can just print it. Okay, using the print statement inside the function, as we have seen, we can print it, we cannot use it. Now, so by default, a function returns none type. Okay, by default, all the functions return none type only. Okay? Variables defined in the function is not accessible outside. If you are defining a variable inside a function, it is not accessible outside. A value can be returned from function using return keyword. So if you want to return something from the function, we have to use the return keyword. Okay, so now let us see how we can modify the function, above function over here. So add. So here, instead of printing, what I am doing return input 1 plus input 2. Okay, so this is a new definition of add. Then I am calling add 5 6. Okay, so whatever value is coming from add is assigned to h. This is variable assignment, we know that. Now I am printing h. I got the value as 11. Got it? And the type of x is int. Okay, so this is how you can return some output, some value from the function. So a function can take the inputs using parameters. We can supply the values to functions through arguments, and a function can return something from it using the keyword return. Okay, so now coming to our earlier example of banking. So if you see the type of banking, it is none type, because if you have seen noticed over here, when we define the function, we are just printing few things. It is not returning anything. Okay, But if it's not if it doesn't return anything, will the user be able to know what is the choice the user has made? Means will the program be able to know, right? So for that we can modify this thing. Okay, we have modified this. We are getting the user choice, and we are getting into a variable choice, and we are returning the choice. So this is a new defined function, print banging function. I'm calling the function again. So it is asking enter your choice. It is asking me so after printing the options, it is asking me for a choice. So I am just saying my choice is 3. Okay, so similar that way we can make use of input and output provisions of function to update our code. Okay, so if you see, I have rewritten the earlier code. So we have the balance over here. We have the print banking option. So what it is doing, it is printing all the options, it is getting the user choice, and it is returning the choice. Okay, this is so many things are happening in this function. Okay, and in deposit what is happening, it is taking the deposit amount and it is updating the balance. In withdrawal what is happening, it is checking whether we have enough balance, okay, to withdraw the money, and if we have enough balance we are updating the balance. Okay, so in the code, in the infinite, inside the infinite loop, we print the options, we get the choice, depending on choice we make deposit, withdrawal, then print the balance and exit from the loop. So this is how functions can help us in writing modular programs. So main highlight of functions is it helps us to make the program modular and more readable. Statements inside the function will be executed only if it is called. Functions can be defined, reused any number of times, and functions cannot be called before it is defined. There are two kinds of functions: user-defined functions, which the user defines. We can define user-defined function using the def keyword. Built-in functions are the functions which we were using so far, like print, input, len, etc. Functions can take inputs and it can give outputs. Inputs are taken by the functions using the parameters by specifying the parameters, and the values to the parameters is supplied during function call, and those values are known as arguments. There is no limit to number of parameters that a function can have, and the values are assigned in the order it is been passed in normal case. Then a function usually returns none if it is not explicitly specified. So if you want to return some explicit value to be used in your code, then we have to use the return keyword. Using return keyword we can return a value from a function. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for next video. Thank you.